Hello and welcome to the Posture Dojo podcast. My name is Sam Miller. I'm your host on this postural transformation journey, sharing some of the stories from my own healing journey of an 85-degree kyphoscoliosis, as well as talking to experts from a variety of fields that can empower us on our own postural transformation journeys. Today, I'm excited to be talking to Megan McCarthy from Embody with MM, who is a somatic healer and yoga teacher. Megan, I'll let you introduce yourself and how you describe the modality that you're sharing with people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I blend somatic movement and yoga. I am first and foremost a certified yoga therapist through the International Association of Yoga Therapy. So that is the main training and background that I have. But in that training, I was introduced to somatics, which oftentimes the lineage might go to Thomas Hanna, some Felt, also Alexander technique, and different modalities that fall into the somatics lineage. And I took some of those movements that you often see in somatics and blended them with the philosophy of yoga, which we use what's called the kosha model, that we are multidimensional beings. So we can't just work with the physical, we need to work with the mental, emotional, and even the spiritual levels, particularly when we're looking at chronic pain or trauma. So I blend it with that. And then also in somatics, they typically don't work with respiration. And as a yoga therapist, I found that was a pretty big miss to be doing these beautiful movements and not consider the breath, because the breath is one of our greatest assets when working with the nervous system.
Beautiful. I mean, somatics is, I'm definitely seeing an increased interest online. People are opening their minds to, okay, somatic healing. How do you describe what that process is in your body for someone dealing with these chronic pains or traumas?
Okay. So I'd start with the word soma itself and the definition. And soma means living body in Greek. And so it's this idea that we are self-aware, self-responsible somas, and therefore we can heal ourselves. In fact, healing isn't something we do, it's something we are. And so the somatic viewpoint takes that into consideration and again works with full body healing. The best way to describe how it works is that people have different doorways. They could work more in the physical realm and be aware of their physical body. But with somebody with chronic pain, that may not be the most comfortable place for them. We also work with the breath. So that would be pranayama in yoga. And we work with the mental emotional level as well, if that's their most comfortable doorway in. And by working with any one of those doorways, we are healing all in that soma. So the other way I describe a soma in a simpler way to understand is that you and I each have an all access pass to everything that's inside of our skin, from the skin and in. And we are the only ones that have that. So it's so precious to us to be able to feel sensation within our body. And we know this term called interoception, which tells us simple things like we're hot or we're cold or we have to go to the bathroom, we're full. Interoception can tell us so much more about ourselves. And when we go into our soma, we learn things like the difference between having a sensation of finding a long lost muscle versus pain itself. And we stay below the threshold of pain and work on a sensation scale of 1 to 10.
Healing is something that we are, not what we do. That really stood out to me about how you approach things. And I believe that too. And I think you've put it really well there, is because, the body is naturally healing itself, but sometimes things get in the way. Sometimes those things are physical and sometimes those things are emotional or from a traumatic imprint that are in our body. So for me, the optimal state of being is removing a lot of these removing these obstacles, removing these obstructions that may be preventing our highest potential life force and flow. And I can tell you've drawn on a variety of kind of methods here that are extremely valuable when put together. You've mentioned that these are the doorways inside are different for each person. I had an incredible healing session on Sunday, actually, and I had a bit of a shiver. I was on a rooftop, we're looking at the full moon, and I had a bit of a shiver, and I followed that shiver. I kind of, instead of kind of trying to sit up straight and trying to resist that shiver, I went with the shiver, and I kind of listened to that and learned what that had to teach me. And I went into a very kind of deep place. I kind of went into kind of like the scene of the crime, sometimes I call it, or the origin of the trauma, or I kind of gave space to the pain that I felt but I usually ignore. And so by giving that space to it, to go towards it, to give time with it, to pay attention to it, I was able to release a lot of that. And it was extremely healing for me. When we have a postural compromise like scoliosis or kyphosis, a lot of the time we're trying to hide that pain, or we're trying to compensate for that. We're trying to sit up straight, and we kind of forget that we have this compromise, or we try to ignore it. And that process of trying to do things create these compensations to readdress, to rebuild the posture. At least the first step for me is going to release those old postures that we have, those compensations that we have, to start from the beginning. So this is why I'm really fascinated by what you're doing, because I think you've drawn a lot of different techniques together. At the moment in the conventional medical system, beyond bracing, beyond surgery, they're starting to adopt Schroth more. And I actually just spoke to a very experienced Schroth practitioner. Schroth method is learning how to de-rotate the rib cage with the breath. And I feel like the next step the next thing for the conventional medical system is having a bit more of the psychosomatic aspect, which is something that you're doing. What kind of people do you work? Have you had experience with people who are dealing with some types of postural compromises? Or what are the people that you're working with typically looking to do with you?
Okay, I'll answer that. And then I had a number of things that came up as you were speaking. So the first one is I was very blessed to have a yoga studio for 10 years where I taught on average 14 classes a week. And 3 of those were somatic yoga only. And these were people, and my students, honestly, are my best teachers ever. But they were people that would never be able to go to a traditional yoga class. They were required with somatic yoga once to get up and down off the floor, and that's it. And if they couldn't, we had other options. But the other thing with somatics is that they are on the ground where they're completely safe and comfortable. We always start with safe and comfortable before we explore the body. And they can close their eyes. So there's no intimidation. There's no comparison with somebody else in the room. Unlike yoga, somatic movements don't have an end pose this culmination we're trying to reach. Mm-hmm. It is truly about the journey and the exploration of the sensations that you feel in the movements. So having said that, I actually started the program working with cardiac rehabilitation and cancer rehabilitation. But my classes grew to include people with MS. I had quite a few students with fibromyalgia. And posturally speaking, somatic yoga, or somatics in general, does something called a pandiculation. And if you want to take a moment with me, and I'll see if I can make you yawn, and take a big stretch on your yawn, and notice what's happening as you do that. Take your arms up overhead, and then take your breath out and let it go. So if you have dogs and cats at home, you see every time they get up, they do what we call pandiculation, which was that yawn. We actually contract muscles, and then we lengthen into that contraction, And that's done on the inhalation in my system. And then the exhalation, we completely release and relax. And what that does, it's very innate in our body, is it resets our muscles at the nervous system level. In
Beautiful. Beautiful.
somatic movement, we focus very much on that because you had mentioned something about releasing compensations. That is the main technique that we use, physically speaking, would be the pandiculation movement. But I didn't mention I'm a healing touch certified practitioner and also an Ayurvedic marma therapist. So I've been working in energy therapy for many years. And what I've found in comparison to teaching traditional yoga classes is that many of my students are able to work not only in the mental emotional arena, but in the spiritual or the energetic level, what we would say is the subtle body with somatic yoga, which I think is a really important part of healing chronic pain and trauma.
Beautiful. Okay, yeah. So there's a couple different pathways there that I'd like to go down. I guess we'll start at the first one, which is where you really described pandiculation and how that can release tension in the body. And so by contracting and then elongating and relaxing, we're kind of going through a range of motion at a very deep level. I mean, at the nervous system level, right? We have chronic tensions or chronic compensations in the body that might be holding our imbalances, and we can hold them for so long that we don't even know we're holding them. And we can actually start kind of putting to sleep the neural pathways, or we're not aware of these pathways that we have to even give an instruction there. So these pandiculations seem to be a way to really audit the range of, I mean, in the physical body, it's the range of motion. How would you describe the range, like that range or that field in the somatic body?
What I would correct in some ways is that somatics is not about increasing range of motion so much, nor is it about in any way building strength. It is
Correct.
really at its most easeful level, reprogramming the nervous system at the muscles, in the muscles. So there's a term called what we say is sensory motor amnesia, and that would be a Thomas Hanna term. And it's exactly what you described, which is that if somebody's got chronic back pain, for instance, more than likely it's not musculoskeletal. It is the muscles themselves. So if you say, and you could say if somebody goes to the chiropractor, is going to reset those bones. But what's holding the bones in the first place is the muscles, right? So the chiropractic becomes a bit of a revolving door. So I had good relationships where I worked with chiropractors because what we're doing again is resetting the muscles, because when they're chronically stuck, and understand that muscles can be stuck, and I'm using easy terms, when they're short or when they're long or anywhere in between. It's a fallacy to think that muscles are always chronically short and tight. So they can get stuck anywhere, but the idea is just to get them moving. So sometimes we actually take what might be a tight or short muscle and make it tighter and then slowly release it. Because if you were to take your hand and slowly open your hand as wide as you can and then make it really tight, think of that, all of the muscles in your body, they should have that ability to move through the range of motion. That is freedom. And so to find that freedom, the other part that I have really tuned into is that we can bring the mind in even more, or the brain specifically, by asking our body voluntarily to make the same movement from different muscle combinations. So where do we initiate a movement from? It's very different, for instance, to move your arm from your elbow. It's very hard for people to do versus typically we're moving from our hand or our shoulder. And if I'm working with somebody with shoulder pain or any sort of shoulder dysfunction, learning the difference between moving your arm from your arm and moving your arm from your shoulder girdle, those are two completely different things for the nervous system, though for my sake, it doesn't look that different, but somebody in their soma will feel it completely differently.
Yeah, and to be clear, I wasn't suggesting to increase the range of motion is the goal. And as you said, the goal isn't the strength either, right? It's going through these ranges of motion, I guess, as you said, to explore the freedom, right? Because we may have an awareness in maybe part of that range, but these techniques are auditing to see maybe, as you said, sensory motor amnesia in part of this range, and that's might be where our compensations are held, where our tensions are held as well. Just one other thing on the pandiculation, something that I've found another easy way to kind of get into this is when you first wake up. I think we all have that it's kind of like an increased pandiculation ability, right? Because we're in these lower brain waves, we're still in a semi-sleep state. We can naturally tap, or let's say quickly, or kind of ease straight into this pandiculation at a deep level. And so I'm enjoying moving the feet, pointing the toes forward and flexing there as well. I'm exploring different kind of ranges of movement, even like tilting the feet side to side independently of other parts of the body. There are a few techniques that people can do to kind of start realizing the potential of intentional pandiculation when they first wake up.
As you said, it's very common when we first wake up or anytime we get up, but it's something when I talk about interoception earlier, I think that what happens is that we're talked out of interoception because as children, we're asked to sit still in our chairs. And I know that in my schooling, if I would have yawned during a class, that was considered to be a bad thing to the teacher, right? That I'm bored or something. And the truth is a yawn is one of the most innate ways we do it. So what I do find with most of my students and the teachers that teach somatics with me is that the more you voluntarily pandiculate, so you make yourself do it, the more you will start to notice you will do it involuntarily. So more than just the morning stretch, you'll be more inclined to notice when your body needs that reset and to give it to it, because it's been sort of bred out of us having to sit, and we're told all the time, no, you have to go to the bathroom now. Maybe I don't have to go to the bathroom now. All of these innate things that we eat too much even though we're full, right? That's all part of our interoception. And that's a really important part of somatics, is getting in touch with that interoception. I want to mention one other thing that I think it helps people to understand, because again, you're working on the level of the brain, but you're also working on the subtle body. But back to the brain, there was a very popular book, The Body Keeps Score, which became quite popular during the pandemic. And Bessel van der Kolk, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. But what I like to tell people is that the body doesn't keep score. It's the brain that keeps score, and the body is the scoreboard. So that's why when we're trying to recreate posture or get rid of chronic pain or trauma, we need to work with the brain on some level. And even if that's just through pranayama breathing techniques, that is working with the brain. If somebody chooses not to do full movements, I have them actually, I've worked with people with neuropathy who cannot move their toes, but just by imagining what the movement would feel like, it's kinesthetic imagery is what I would say. It's very healing and it's very satisfying. So that's just another route to go.
Let's dive into that a little deeper. When you're approaching an area of maybe it's tension, maybe it's a pain, we know that our brain is connected to the nervous system. So our brain extends through the spinal cord and the nervous system, woven throughout our spine, our entire body, and that's where our instructions and signals are sent back and forth from our brain to our muscles. And so we might have parts of that sensory system that's not as active. And let's go a little bit deeper into that. We imagine the programming happening, or how do you approach an area that has been put to sleep or has amnesia?
The sensory motor amnesia. So if you're talking about a case where they cannot physically move, as I mentioned, I'm going to give an exact example. If we have one leg that has some sort of sensory motor amnesia and the other does not, we might do what I call the happy leg first, and take full brain notes of what it feels like, the sensations, what you say to yourself. And then we would kind of file that in the immediate memory bank. And then we go to do what I call the grumpy side. And in doing the grumpy side, even if it can't move, we have that image. We work a lot with imagery, and I actually call it the imagery of anatomy. So I will show people pictures of their anatomy. You'd be shocked by how many people don't know what's inside of them. And to picture those bones, those muscles moving, and what that would feel like, even if the physical movement doesn't happen. Because what we do know now, and I started with yoga in the 80s because of panic attacks. In those days, it was not accepted as it is now that our thoughts change our biology. And absolutely, our thoughts change our biology. So that can be a very healing tool, even if we have something that physically cannot move. The other thing that's different with this approach is that we work with full body patterns. So even though the issue may be showing up with a foot or a leg, we very conscious to make sure we work with the torso, because I think you had said something about the Schroffenbohr being working with the rib cage. And on the subtle level, the rib cage is our safety area. So a lot of people will have stuckness in the rib cage area. But it's important to not just work with, say, a leg length discrepancy, for instance. So we have one of the reflexes in somatics is called the trauma reflex. And I had this myself where my right leg was actually an inch shorter than the left. It wasn't like that at birth. So I knew something had to have gone wrong. And though they wanted to put me in a foot lift, fortunately, my yoga therapist said, no, your right waist and side body is shorter, and that's lifting up your right leg. So I had to do quite a bit of work on my right side to release those muscles and then wake up the muscles on the left side that had been on a really long holiday and not doing anything. And that's very common. We see these trauma reflexes where one side of the body is doing all the work and the other one is the sleeper side, as I say. So it addresses those full body patterns where it may be showing. The joke I say is always look at least a joint or two away from where the problem shows.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, this is, yeah, what I'm hearing from you is a very holistic, complete approach to healing in the body. Sometimes Schroth method is great for understanding the breath, the biomechanics, so creating the elongation, and it's very biomechanical mostly. But what you're kind of speaking to is the feeling and how to, I guess, copy and paste that into the places that we need to. So by connecting with a feeling, a place, a joint, a movement that does feel good, and taking that imagination, that visualization into the area in your body, that's a really, really exciting technique. And I think it's tapping into what we need to, because the way that we visualize and imagine is the way that we can navigate and start sculpting in parts of our body that we may not have been aware that we can do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I would add to that we look at how we develop in fetal development and infant development is we develop from the central nervous system out to the periphery. And then we get really good at things. We say muscle memory, right? Muscle memory is a fantastic thing to save the energy in your brain if it's actually working right. But the other side is muscle memory can be an enemy if we're always compensating using one side, because muscle memory is this idea, right, that the muscles will always go to the first responders, whatever patterns you build. And the older we see people in what we would say is old age posture is not really a thing. What it is that we've been on the planet longer in these earth suits, and there's more potential for the muscle memory to get messed up. There's more potential for trauma to be in the body. So we see these rounded shoulders in these positions that we just assume we're supposed to go into as we age. And it's not the case. If we're able to come back and work from the central nervous system, again, taking it into the torso and then working out to the periphery, it's redevelop our muscle memory all over again.
That's beautiful. There's a big movement right now to make more memories in life. The healing journey is about making new memories in the body, right? Making new grooves, just a river that's been flowing the same path for a very long time. It's a monumental effort to start changing it, but 1 degree at a time, you can start creating these new pathways, degree by degree, and create new memories and new directions and healthy flow. Megan, I thank you for the work you're doing and these pieces that you're bringing together. I know that this is helping people from a wide range. This is so deep. The approach is so deep into the system that there's a wide range of issues that this addresses. Please let us know how do you usually start working with people, and where can they find you? I'll also include the links in the description as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I am our website is Embody with MM, and I do offer one-on-one yoga therapy online and in person, of course. But a lot of my focus right now is on training teachers, because my goal is to have somatic yoga in the hands of more yoga teachers, even if they just use it for as warm-ups or cool downs in their regular yoga classes, which is what I used to do. So I really enjoy working with clients one-on-one, but I also have a great desire to make the yoga industry more accessible to more people. And I think that is really what drives me, is I don't want anybody to ever feel like there's not a class that they can't find healing, and to make friends with their brain, and to also learn to love their body. And it's a process. It absolutely is. And having said that too, my process is about being playful and being kind, being curious. There's no end pose. So bringing that to the people. And the other way you can get in contact with me is we run a beautiful small retreat center in gorgeous West Cork, Ireland, my husband and I. And so we only take anywhere from 1 to 8 people at a time. We have a custom built timber yoga studio. So we are booking for the summer right now. So that's another option if you're looking for more in-depth time with us, and also to visit Ireland.
Amazing. And that's for teachers as well, right? And that's for teachers as well. So does somebody need to be a yoga teacher to start on the somatic yoga trainings?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I've had a lot of body workers come on. It is certified through International Association of Yoga Therapy and Yoga and Yoga Alliance, but you do not have to be a yoga teacher. What I do ask is that if you're coming because you are in active chronic pain, it's probably not the course for you, honestly. Then it would be better to work individually. I have a lot of YouTube videos, or come and visit us for a retreat. So the retreats are separate then from the trainings. The trainings are offered both in a full immersion on site in West Cork, Ireland, and I have an online version of my training, which right now we're in week 4 of 10 weeks, and I'll be running it again in the fall. So that's quite
amazing. Okay, I thank you very much, Megan. I also enjoyed what you said about bringing joy and play into this. When you look at wolf cubs and you look at nature, you'll see that as young people or animals, we learn through play. We develop new muscle memories through play. We find weaknesses. We find places to pay attention to and to practice, and to take the opportunity to spend time and space to go into those places, to learn, to understand, to release, to audit, to wake up and relax, depending on what the case may be. So that's a long journey, but it can be a joyful journey when you start feeling the differences in your body. So thank you, Megan, for bringing together a range of practices that I know are beneficial for people. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I hope that this information, or my videos are all free on YouTube, over 250 somatic yoga videos, can help more people. So thank you for having me on.
Amazing. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you in the next one.